email address 744-4454. Spectrum underwrote all the deliveries, and you can get the information on this. They're looking for cars, classic cars between 65 and 72, drivers with some engineering on the street, and by the
Good
way, they're looking
morning.
at cars that look brand new back in the 80s, and people were taking care of them, and we've got some of them running and
So I don't know how the technology works. I never do, but it's really funny. Hey, Kane, good morning. It was really funny because on my screen, the first thing that popped up was a like before any humans were in there. I'm like, I'm getting bots. Morning, Steve. I'm getting bots like the U.S. Mint gets bots. That's fun. Who's programming bots to watch the CoinGeek radio show live stream, right? That is one lonely dude who's doing that. So I don't know if you guys are all up to date on the U.S. Mint stuff. That was too much fun. All right, 10:50 p.m. Oh, nice. Ricky, good morning. So it's the U.S. Mint director stepped down. We saw that happen, so that was fun. And they have a new interim in there, as some of you may already know. But I'm still really fascinated by the entire movement of the U.S. Mint to, everything. If you guys didn't see it, I did a video just about what you should do or what I would do if I ran the U.S. Mint, and that was more fun than a barrel of monkeys looking at what you guys had to say about, what you would do if you ran the zoo, if you ran the U.S. Mint. And I got some pushback on get rid of the penny, by the way, the cent, but, I think it's a good idea. But, someone said that, all those $100 bills that cost them 40 cents to produce or whatever it is, make up for it. So here's what I didn't suggest, which is let's bring back the $500 bill and the $1,000 bill. Who's in? Huh? Who's with me on that? I think that'd be fantastic. You could put whoever your newest favorite guy is on there or gal, or maybe we stop putting dead presidents on them. Let's go way back, right? So we're going to talk a little bit today about people that should have been on currency, that were almost on currency and that didn't make it, and why they didn't make it on the currency. So that's coming up. And then who's on currency? I would like to see some old school designs that didn't necessarily have people on them. Well, they always seem to have people somewhere, right? So I mean, but people were usually pretty happy just with animals, right? So like your bison note's real popular. Of course, then you had Mayweather Lewis. Is that right? Lewis and Clark.
What was that, Jerry?
I said Mayweather, like the guy's a boxer, right?
Oh yes, we do. We have 2 pairs actually.
So there's a couple of different things that you
I guess
can
2 of the 4 packs.
look at with the designs. They had a lot of allegorical symbols and stuff on them, which is cool. So some of everyone's favorites are these. They still had people on the back, right? There's that. So the educational series, which had one of my favorite notes in it, the $1 silver certificate. But maybe, just maybe, that's what we should do with the currency. There's that $1 note I was talking about. But of course, and by the way, that had Martha on the back, Martha Washington, so that was pretty cool. So maybe they bring back the $500 and $1,000 note, and maybe they do put. I'd take Martha on something. She probably lived through a hell of a lot more than any of us did. Or some really cool allegories too. Some of the symbolism that they had back on some of the older currency probably wouldn't hurt to have today. Wouldn't hurt to use it. All right. Did you hear of the Bitcoin theft in London at the Hilton Hotel? No, I did not. Next week we're going to be talking about frauds, fakes, and phonies. I should probably do famous thefts also. That could be its own show. In fact, I think maybe I'll write that down for sure. did not hear about it. One of my favorite thefts is, if I can have a favorite theft, maybe I shouldn't have a favorite theft. I wasn't involved, guys. One of these giant gold coins that were, I'm trying to remember how, I think they were 1,000 ounces. And the guys, it was in the second floor of a museum in Germany, and it was taken down out a ladder down the back. And I just think that's had to been an inside job. Well, not that criminals can't have ladders, but that's the type of coin that I don't think they resold. I think they just melted the sucker. So I'll have to look into this coin theft. Ken, was it just a dealer? A couple dealers? Scary stuff. The world's getting kind of crazy out there. Steve wants to know if I like the reverse proof eagles. Yeah, I thought they came out pretty good. In fact, I think we had a video drop on Tuesday that had that we covered that. Let me see. I'm not smart enough to manage my own videos here, but if I were right now, I would just look and see when that hit, right? So we had, that went up on the 29th, whatever day that is. And I thought the reverse proof looks really nice. I actually prefer the Type 2. I think that eagle looks really good. It's got a lot more lifelike versus of course, we were talking about symbology. The original silver eagle was a lot more symbolic looking. So I'm just going to keep playing with my camera until it gets to a place where I feel like it's not completely out of line with everything that's happening. But it's okay during the show. I'm got to not focus on you guys anyways. Got to focus on everything else here. So, all right. Crossovers versus crackouts. Yeah, we're going to be playing that game a little bit here. I don't know if you guys saw. I just had that, got back the proof Morgan dollar that I had, an ICG holder. I don't know, spoiler alert. So, there's that. You have to watch that. It was yesterday that dropped. 500,000 pound reward. Oy vey. That is, that's a lot of cash. That's some trouble going on there. All right. 1 ton gold coin from the Perth Mint. There you go. So was the 1 ton gold coin from the Perth Mint, is that, we talk about in the realm of just because you can. That giant gold coin was a
2 minutes left, guys. 2 minutes.
Was a Canadian maple leaf, and they were made to order, and they weren't a ton, but they were too big for one person to move. So I'm thinking that it took a couple people to get it down and roll it on its edge a little ways, but I think 5 were made because they were made to order. Maybe that'll solve the U.S. Mint's problem if they just made everything to order and didn't have to worry about any of that other stuff. So, I can't talk and type at the same time. I just typed in something about the topic this morning here. We've got
1 minute left, guys.
your favorite movie that has a coin-related character, historical figure on it. Coin or currency. See, I wasn't thinking. There we go. In the meantime, anyone else get in their reverse proofs? I think a lot of people got them because they made 175,000 with a limit of 1 per household.
30 seconds.
And I don't know how the bots are. I don't know how many you can actually get through the bots. So I also don't know the approved bulk purchase program. I also don't know how many people, how many of the coins are unavailable because of that. So, all right, we've got. Okay, so Abraham Lincoln is the obvious answer. I'm kind of avoiding Lincoln and and George Washington just because they're too easy. I'm actually going after people who are pretty famous in their
You
own
guys are all
right.
clear.
And then in a couple of weeks here, maybe we'll do a show on some guys that are not so famous because there are
I'll
a
get the,
ton of
winners to
guys
you as
on
soon as I have them,
currency.
Jerry.
There's a ton of guys on currency that you or I probably don't know anything about the history on them.
All right, sounds good. We'll talk to you next week.
By the way, there's a ton of guys who are also on, U.S. commemoratives that you probably don't know. In fact, one of them is this guy here on this Albany half, who's going to get a little bit of a mention today, just in passing. Also, the quiz of the day. I don't have a word of the day yet, but want to see if anybody knows who this little lady is. And when I say little lady, I mean little. It's hard to tell from the photo here, but she's about 2.5 feet tall, and she's related to the conversation that we're having today. Some of the conversation. She is tangentially related to someone who's on a U.S. coin. Not related, by blood or marriage or anything like that. I mean related historically. So we're going to go down some crazy routes today. Anytime you have little people involved, which is a term that I think we're allowed to use nowadays. But I do have little people in my bloodline, actually. So I feel like I'm allowed to talk about it anyways. But
30 seconds, man.
all right, we're going up here in 30 seconds. Dude, Jay Derrick, you the man. Or woman. Let's not be too presumptive here, but that is Tom Thumb's wife. Extra bonus points. You probably already looked. Well, maybe you already know. I was going to say if you know what her name was. If I would have just said her name, you guys wouldn't have guessed. But I'm going to give him a minute to answer and see if he knows. Good morning, Joey. Oh, we got a radio show to do, guys.
Welcome to the CoinGeek Radio Show, where we talk about money, life, and history. Here's your host,
Good morning, Tucson, and welcome to a lovely Saturday morning in October. It is cool. It is brisk out. It was in the 50s this morning, upper 50s, and we'll take that. It's going to hit 90 degrees today, and that's your weather brought to you by TheCoinGeek. And this show, of course, is brought to you by Old Pueblo Coin. Old Pueblo Coin, we're at the northwest corner of Speedway and Columbus at 4255 East Speedway, kind of right across the street there from the Royal Kia dealership. If you've driven down Speedway, you've probably seen it. It's the white building with the green trim. And if you've ever wondered what happens in that mysterious building, well, we appraise coins and currency, gold and silver items, jewelry, bullion, sometimes older historical items, especially if they're related to Tucson or Southern Arizona or Arizona in general. And we're always happy to look at different things for you. The appraisals that we offer are always free. So you can bring in your shoebox full of stuff or your old cigar box or your old Altoids can, Band-Aids canister. Let's see here. How about your old pill bottles? We've seen coins come in pretty much everything. So I've actually had people come in with entire ice boxes, ice chests with the rolling wheels, 6 of them full of coins. So I challenge anyone there in the radio audience to go ahead and beat that. Go ahead and bring in, volume-wise, more than that. But we're happy to look at them and give you an appraisal. An appraisal is going to be a process where we look at the coins and currency and gold and silver items and give you a price on it, let you know what the wholesale value is. And that way, if you wanted to sell them, then you could sell them. If you want to keep them, you can. It's perfectly fine. And we do this 6 days a week, Monday through Friday, 9 to 4, and then on Saturdays, 10 to 4. You can call us at 881-7200 to schedule an appointment. I would like to personally help you out if I can. If I'm in and out, but we can set up an appraisal time. So call 881-7200 sometime and set up an appraisal. And I'd love to meet you if you're in Tucson, especially. I'm a native. You're a native. You could be a transplant. It doesn't matter. It's all good. It's all the love. And now for the 10-second sports update, the Arizona Diamondbacks really stink, and so does the U of A football team. And that's all I know right now about local sports. But I'm still probably going to get down to the U of A football game, I think, next week and watch them lose to the lowly Bruins. But two more news articles, then we'll get on with the show, the actual show part of the show, and that is next Friday night is Zooson. So if you've never experienced Zooson, that is where the local Tucson Zoo, it's their big fundraiser. I think they raise close to six figures for the zoo, and if you're local and you've never been to the Tucson Zoo, you should just go there sometime and support it. Zooson's a little bit different. You have vendors that are giving out, it's an expensive ticket, and everyone, once you get in, all the food and drinks are all comped. They're all paid for, basically, donated by the different local companies that support it, and there's auctions and stuff. It's really a cool time. So hopefully I'll see you down there, because I plan on getting down to Zooson, and it'll be fun. So today, what we're going to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, are movies, so to speak, and the role that Hollywood and movies and theater play in our understanding of history. And then also, of course, since I do specialize in coins and currency, we are going to talk a little bit about how there is overlap into the coin and currency market, into coins that have been made and or currency that have been made with some of these historical characters. And some of these historical characters are people who you may or may not have ever heard of or known of necessarily, unless you had seen one of the plays or movies, and or maybe they just kind of came back to prominence because of these said movies. And if you want to add anything to the conversation today, our local number here is 520-719-1490. That's 520-719-1490. If anyone cares to call in and join the conversation about some of these historical figures. I have two really main characters with a lot of little sub-characters tied to them that I want to talk to you today about. And one of them, well, the funny thing is, when I got into this, all the different movies I kept coming up with were actually musicals, and I don't know how that happened. I'm not necessarily some like musical junkie, but they just happened to be musicals. And the first musical is The Greatest Showman, of course, a movie with Hugh Jackman and Zac Efron, which I only know these names because I have to look them up, because that's how much I know about movies. Hugh Jackman, I know he's in a ton of stuff, and so is Zac Efron. When people just say, it's like the really good-looking guy who sings a little bit on that movie, I'm like, I don't know who this is. If someone would have said Zac Efron, I would have had no idea who you're talking about. And that's my movie knowledge is not as good as my coin knowledge. So for those of you who don't know the main character that Hugh Jackman plays, his name was Phineas Taylor Barnum, also known as PT Barnum, because nobody liked the name Phineas until, of course, Phineas and Ferb came out, and then all of a sudden Phineas was a cool name again, and I'm guessing lots of people are going to start naming their kids Phineas. But PT Barnum. So if you are under the age of probably 40, maybe 35, you probably have a recollection of Barnum in Bailey's Circus, right? That's the same P.T. Barnum. That was out of his history, right? And I say out of his history, of course, because that actually ran from 1871 until 2017, when the final show finally happened. The final curtain call came on the circus. Now, P.T. Barnum was born in 1810 and lived to 1891. So he was, in his 60s when he finally started the circus. So he had quite the life before then. But as far as the coins go, he's actually on a 1936 Bridgeport, Connecticut centennial. And it's really funny because they say that this Bridgeport coin, that P.T. Barnum is Bridgeport's most famous individual. And I have to laugh at the comment, because then, if you use the internet, you look and see what famous people come from Bridgeport. And I didn't know any of them, because most of them were actors. I should say I didn't know any of them, because I think their number one was John Mayer, a musician. But the top 30 were mostly actors and a couple of athletes and musicians. They didn't have P.T. Barnum on their list of their top 30, and I had to laugh because I thought, well, he is on a coin I mean, so there's that. He was apparently for Bridgeport, Connecticut Centennial, considered at the time one of the most popular, most famous guys ever. And the funny thing is, of course, about The Greatest Showman is that you have Hugh Jackman on there, who's a handsome fellow, and P.T. Barnum. If you gave him a red nose, he basically looked like a clown. I mean, he was a character. Like when you go to, the fair or whatever, and there's a guy set up there with a big canvas, and they're doing caricatures of people. P.T. Barnum already looked like a caricature without ever having to be drawn that way. If you just drew his face, that's kind of what he looked like. So P.T. Barnum was really well known for, he was famous for something that he probably never said, and that is that a fool and his money are soon parted. And there are certain quotes that P.T. Barnum had that are known to be his quotes because he wrote a book that was a little bit more popular called The Art of Money Getting. And so he was really good at getting money from people. And you kind of, if you see The Greatest Showman, you recognize the fact that he was considered somewhat of a huckster, a swindler, of a character. But really, I liken him to somebody who ended up being a little bit more successful, by the time he died, someone who was also considered a visionary. If P.T. Barnum is a huckster, well, so is Walt Disney, right? Because they basically did the same thing. You had guys whose lives were very similar in the fact that they lived absolutely on the edge financially. They risked everything multiple times. They probably drove people in their lives completely nuts with their ideas. And they thought outside the box. And they also were completely into the entertainment industry. They were into the fantasy industry, if you will, because, P.T. Barnum was creating things, this wax museums, the America's first aquarium, all these things that he wanted people to come and see. And yeah, he benefited from it financially, of course, and that's how this works, right? If you bring something, what's as long as we're into movie mode, if you build it, they will come, right? Field of Dreams. And that's exactly what P.T. Barnum did, but he gave people something to dream about and something to see that was unusual and different. And we probably have P.T. Barnum to thank for the current Ripley's Believe It or Not type place, right? Because a lot of his original stuff was like that. He had the Siamese twins. He had the mermaid, which was one of his famous things, which eventually I think burned up in one of the multiple fires that his buildings went through. And the mermaid, of course, was more likely the bottom half of a fish and the top half of a monkey skeleton. It was probably put together. More famously, he also had a gal who was supposedly 140 years old that was George Washington's nanny. Now, they think that the lady was probably in her 80s or 90s and was probably not. So when you get the swindler idea, you partially because he absolutely made stuff up, right? So that's where you get the swindler identity from. And this idea that a fool and his money is soon parted, all of these things. But P.T. Barnum, I put him and Walt Disney in the same category as people who were creative. They were outside the box. And I think sometimes the way that you view these people historically depends on your own personality, right? So, and your own viewpoint. If you are very much so just a by the letter of the law individual, and don't necessarily think much outside the box, you would consider people like this to be, somewhat unscrupulous because they are creating things and doing things that are outside of the purview of what you would consider normal discourse, right, in your normal daily life. And it's interesting though because this viewpoint, it's harder for me to wrap my head around. I had to think a lot about that because to me, as someone who owns a small business, I think people who own small businesses oftentimes already think a little bit outside the box. In other words, when I bought the coin shop, I thought, okay, this is the thing that I'm supposed to do. It just was like a very natural next step for me in my life. And I had people come up to me that I'm close to and said, yeah, I could never do that. And at first I thought they were being kind of just tongue-in-cheek about it, like, But then I realized, no, they actually literally mean that. Like, I would not do what you just did. And so there's, for me, a little bit of a kindred spirit, I think, in P.T. Barnum and in Walt Disney, right? So, by the way, for those of you who are on the radio listening and you don't realize this, you can watch live stream on YouTube at YouTube/TheCoinGeek, and you can see that I look hopefully somewhere kind of in between P.T. Barnum and Hugh Jackman. I don't look like either of them, so we'll put that out there. P.T. Barnum actually has some of my favorite quotes, and they're quotes that if you had them, you would think this is from someone who's a real thoughtful individual. Unless a man enters upon the vocation intended for him by nature and be best suited to his peculiar genius, he cannot succeed. So there's a lot of guys that make a living today just teaching you that basic concept of just working within your strengths. P.T. Barnum, the noblest art is that of making others happy. And that, my goodness, if I gave you that quote, you would probably think that that's someone like Walt Disney, right? So here's a guy 100 years before Walt who had, I think, very much so, a kindred spirit. We're going to move on past P.T. Barnum here and move on to our next guest, but we're going to take just a quick break and see who stopped in the coin shop this week, and then we're going to get back after it with someone else.
Welcome in.
Coins do you buy?
Oh, who said that?
Judge me by my size, do you?
Oh, sorry, I didn't see down there.
That is why you fail.
Let me have a look at that. That's pretty rough, even for a medieval coin.
When 900 years old you will reach, look as good. You will not.
Recognize the quotes. Those are all his
Any other
quotes.
coins for me to look at?
Always they come in two. No more, no less.
I'll try to identify the other one.
No, try not. Do or do not. There is no try.
Okay, just don't use any of your Jedi mind tricks on me. Come in today to Old Pueblo Coin at the northwest corner of Speedway, Columbus for your free appraisal on coins, currency, gold and silver items. Call 881-7200 to schedule an appointment. We're open Mondays through Fridays, 9 to 4, and Saturdays, 10 to 4.
It is your destiny.
All right, and folks, locally, it is your destiny to come on down to Old Pueblo Coin and learn more about what you have. I mean, information is power, and so come on down and find out at Old Pueblo Coin, 881-7200, what you have and what the items you have are worth. I do want to mention at this point also that our neighbors to the north, Uncle Bob's Popcorn, great people up over there. Stop in and get some popcorn. They are on Columbus, just north of Speedway, and they have all kinds of fantastic flavors. And I don't know if they've got some of their fall flavors in yet, but pumpkin spice sometimes they do, and also occasionally you get something with a little bit more of a chocolate feel for Christmas time. So that's coming around the corner. I know Christmas is in the air because I saw trees at major shopping centers. So there's that. All right. So we learned from, man, history's great. So the nice thing about these plays and movies and stuff is that they teach us history. They give you some perspective. You might only watch Les Mis because you like songs, right? And you might only watch Hamilton because you like songs. And for some of you out there, Hamilton's not your cup of tea because most of the music is a faster paced kind of maybe hip hop or rap sound to it. But Hamilton is one of my favorite things that's happened in American culture in the last decade, because I believe very strongly that history is not being taught enough to young people. So everyone's focusing on STEM, which is great, right? The science, technology stuff. And the science and technology stuff is going to show you what you're going to do in life, most likely. But it's not going to make you who you are in life. History helps make you who you are in life. So the more you learn about history, the more that you can understand human beings, the more that you can understand the world around you, and the more that you can have a broader scope vision of the world. And I love Hamilton because as someone who has two daughters who I think would otherwise have zero interest in colonial history, Hamilton just absolutely flipped that on its head. And so there's plenty of critiques about Hamilton and as a historical work. Among them, of course, is that you don't really want to have. It's difficult when you critique something if you make the history from the viewpoint of today's time frame. So if you're using our own time frame to kind of portray things, it's more difficult. It's not as realistic. But aside from that, look, you got people that are learning about. You got young people that are learning about colonial America, and that's to me just an absolute win. Alexander Hamilton, for those of you who don't know, is on a lot of U.S. currency historically. Of course, most of you know him just from the $10 bill, and he actually was on a lot of different types of currency. And the movie, of course, Alexander Hamilton. Also, you meet people, of course, like Thomas Jefferson, George Washington. Thomas Paine is mentioned in the play, Lafayette, and also one of the main characters are the Schuyler Sisters. So the Schuyler Sisters, there are some little known facts here that the Schuyler Sisters actually have a relation to someone on a coin. And so for all of you who are actually out in YouTube land, this is a quick challenge, but they only have like 3 seconds to figure out who this is. But the Schuyler Sisters are actually, of course, related to someone by the same last name, who happens to be on the Albany, New York $50, which was produced in 1936, and that was the governor, Peter Schuyler. So that family, when in the movie, in the play, you realize that the Schuyler Sisters, they have a lot of old money. So you're talking about the 250th charter, so you're talking about some of the earliest Americans' power, right? Money, power, however you want to put it. So you're talking about 150 years later that this family was still very prominent in the area. And so that to me is interesting. By the way, for those of you who are in Radio Land and you can't see this coin, it also has a beaver on the backside. So there's some trivia for you. So if you guys want to go ahead and play trivia next time you're together with some friends, 1936 U.S. $50 actually has a beaver on the back. So that was worth the price of admission for listening today. Lafayette also had his own coin. A lot of people don't know that, but Lafayette had his own dollar. It was dated 1900. And up until 1983, it was the only U.S. dollar commemorative, silver dollar, I should say. There were little gold dollars, but all the other commemoratives that were not gold were $50. So Lafayette has a little bit of a special place also in numismatic history, also related, of course, to Alexander Hamilton. So Hamilton, even though historically he's on a lot of paper money, and I'll get to that in just a minute, he's on our $10 bill. Now Hamilton was almost off of our $10 bill until this play and movie became so popular that the government scrapped the plans to get rid of Alexander Hamilton. This to me is fascinating, and this is politics being downstream from culture, right? The culture here is that everyone knows who Hamilton is now. Maybe we should take one of these other guys off of a bill. For those of you who don't know, the original plan was to put Harriet Tubman on the $10 bill, which I think would be absolutely fantastic. That's a great choice, I think, for someone historically to be on currency. I would love to see us move towards circulating commemorative paper money. Some of you out there may have noticed that all of your quarters look different because for the last 2 decades we've had commemorative circulating quarters, one for each state and then one for each state park. And so a lot of other countries have circulating commemorative paper money as well. And with paper money, you can do a lot more as far as information, vision, view. So I think it'd be really cool to have an entire series of just temporary notes, if you want to do it that way. But I'd love to see Harriet Tubman on a bill. But it looks like Alexander Hamilton is not being taken off of any currency anytime soon. He was really, really popular. He wrote helped write these things called the Federalist Papers, which most of you are not aware of, but you should read, because if you want to know what our country was going through back during the Revolution and what the thought processes were of some of these guys, it's pretty fantastic. I'm going to hit on a couple of things that a couple of the bills that Alexander Hamilton is actually on that most of us don't really know about, because most of us are just used to seeing his face on the $10 bill. And by the way, his face on the other currency is almost not recognizable compared to what we're used to, because we're used to seeing him on a modern currency at just a certain way. But some of the earlier currency, as I was reviewing, I was like, oh man, I didn't realize that was Alexander Hamilton on there, because the profile is completely different. And so he looks completely different on some of these other notes, including some of the first U.S. currency, the 1862 notes. He was on the $2 bill, and that note, he has a complete side portrait on there. But those notes were the first greenbacks, the currency that was called greenbacks. There was actually an entire political movement that came out of that currency, known as the greenback. He was also on a $5 bill during the same time. These are all Civil War era bills, so 1862, 1863, 64. The profile was completely different, and he looks absolutely completely different. But then beyond that, now I thought he was just on a couple of bills when I got into this, and then I realized he's actually on a number of different bills from the 1860s, 70s, 1880s, including but not limited to some of these notes that are called compound interest notes. Now, the compound interest notes are notes that you or I have probably never seen before, because almost all of them got turned back in. So they actually earned interest, so people actually redeemed them, and they were usually really larger denominations. So you're talking about bills that were $500 or $1,000. Now, $500 or $1,000 in the 1870s, 1880s, I think you could have bought, most of Tucson back then. Like, what? How many acres? What was the acreage price? Like a quarter an acre, a buck an acre? I mean, you could have bought a lot of land in Arizona in the 1870s for that. So what's amazing about some of these notes is that some of them are actually unknown and or listed as just one or two known. And you can get some notes, compound interest notes from the Civil War era, that the only ones that have sold in the last decade or two have sold in auction. And you're talking about notes that'll be $20,000, $30,000. But some of these notes, some of these $1,000 bills from the 1880s to 1900, some of these trade a little bit more regularly because they're more available. But they'll be 50,000, 100,000. They're not cheap, people. So Alexander Hamilton found his way onto a lot of different currency and a lot of different money, most of which not only most collectors, the average person wouldn't recognize or wouldn't know, but even the average collector, people who collect coins or paper money, probably also wouldn't know about these notes. And it's a really interesting study. And it's an interesting study of things that you and I probably can't afford, right? So a lot of the stuff that he is on, you or I can't afford. Now, those earlier notes from actually the Civil War era are actually a lot more affordable. Most people, it's still a lot of money, but you can buy some of those notes for that $500 to $5,000 range, which is a lot better than these 1882 notes that'll run you $100,000 or $200,000. So that's like, there's my used car price, and then there's like my used house price. What type of collectible do you want to buy, right? So what's fun about all of these areas actually is that there are other things that you can buy and collect and learn from, right? So of course you can read the works of Alexander Hamilton. 20 or 30 years ago, you could buy a lot of circus stuff. And actually today it's probably a lot cheaper than it used to be. As the changing times come with culture, so do the collectibles change. So PT Barnum related items are actually relatively affordable in the marketplace. You can pick up circus related items, which used to be really hot ticket. A lot of that stuff, the old posters, are not as expensive as they used to be. And also, I happen to have an old CDV card of Tom Thumb's. I didn't even mention Tom Thumb. General Tom Thumb was about 2 feet tall, and his wife, Lavinia Warren, Mrs. Tom Thumb, was also a little person. And but you can collect the CDV cards, the old cabinet cards. They're basically portraits or pictures of them, and they're just sometimes you can find them for $5, $10, $15, $20, and that's kind of a fun way to collect things that are related to that history. Amongst all of the oddities, General Tom Thumb was one of the most popular things to go and see, and so kind of jump back to PT Barnum there on you really quick because I had to mention Tom Thumb and his wife. And don't forget, there's lots of different coins and currency out there that you can collect that really tie into history. And for those of you who don't know, the show before this, there's a car show, and there's apparently HBO is coming to Tucson to film some stuff, and they need cars from the 1800s, right? I got the wrong century. That's what happens when you're into this stuff. 1965 to 1972. So if you're in Tucson, or if you want to be in Tucson, I don't know how to look any of this up, but if look for the HBO stuff that's going on in Tucson. It's coming down the pipe here. So, all right, guys. I want to thank, of course, Old Public Coin for having me here today, and for those of you who want some free appraisals to find out whether your collectibles are worth anything, especially gold or silver items, especially coins or currency, I would love to see you. Our number there is 881-7200, Northwest Corner Speedway in Columbus. And everyone else, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate you stopping by and listening to the CoinGeek radio show. All right. Rock and roll.
Thanks for listening to another edition of the CoinGeek Radio Show. Join us next Saturday morning at 8 a.m. where we'll talk about money.
PT Barnum, guys. My goodness. What a guy. What a guy. And I don't know if a lot of you guys like Alexander Hamilton or not, or I should say the play, the movie, the musical. Watching it, you learn a few things. Even if you don't get all the musical stuff, I'm very musically diverse, so I can handle listening to high-speed rap or heavy metal or classical or ska. If not that any of you want to listen to that, but I'm just saying, I don't mind some island music myself here. Yeah, and so Donald, thanks for mentioning that the poor radio listeners don't get the visuals. I agree, but that's just kind of the format that I put up. I'm trying to have it put together in a way that I can talk to people on the radio and have stuff for you guys as well. So anyway, I learned a lot during the production of this show because I had no idea. Because commemorative halves, there is a ton of people on here that I have no idea who these guys are. So, but Peter Schuyler, the first mayor, or was he the first governor? Was this? I probably butchered that, right? But Peter Schuyler and Robert Livingston are on there, right? And a beaver gnawing on a maple branch. So this is funny because, of course, the Red Book doesn't give you the full synopsis of the why on these. But, oh, man. All right. I'm sorry. I got distracted by reading someone's comments as I'm going along here. But the Schuyler Sisters play a major, major role in not only in the movie, the play, but also Alexander Hamilton's life, because he married one of them and apparently had a love interest in another one. And of course they had lots of money, and Alexander Hamilton came from nothing because he was actually born in the Caribbean. And as a teenager, he was actually working on charters and stuff. Like, the guy really had quite the mind, and the play really exhibits that. And the play basically, in a way, makes him more of a hero, but it doesn't gloss over his negative attributes, which is I think it's always good when a movie goes through and takes the time to go ahead and talk about the reality of humans being human, and that we all do things that are just boneheaded at times. And so sometimes we think too highly of our whatever historical figures or heroes, and sometimes we just throw them completely away. I prefer that we like to study them and learn about them, and not just discard them completely just because of the history. So anyway, I found a lot of things interesting. And then the currency that I learned about from Hamilton, oh my goodness, those compound interest notes. By the way, there's some of them that can go upwards of 400, 500,000, because there's none known, there's one known, there's two known. Generally, there's a ton of rarity involved around that stuff. And outside of that one portrait of Hamilton that we see on the bill, on the $10 bill, the other stuff I would have no idea who he is. All right, so let me see what else is going on here. I'm just trying to look at some of the commentary here. And thank you guys for joining me. Glad that Scott, you got a chance to watch it live. That's fun. I've enjoyed just kind of doing this. It's been a good exercise for me to work on just studying and learning things for the topics that we cover. Next week we're going to talk about fakes and phonies and frauds, but also because of some really good input from you guys, I think we'll try to do an episode on famous thefts also. So on my YouTube page there is a community tab, and whatever the most recent post is there, I think I just mentioned that we've got a live event today. I mentioned it yesterday. You can actually just go on to that and write in there if you have historical thefts or frauds that you think should be mentioned. Go ahead and drop a note in there about something, because I'm going to be doing some research over the next week, because that's generally how this goes. I make notes. I've tried to make entire sheets where I just follow a script, but that didn't work for me. So instead, I write down the high points, and then we just keep going and going and going. And then I talk for half an hour and hope my voice doesn't give out, which it started to again. So there's that. I need to learn how to breathe. I should get a singing teacher, right? They teach you how to breathe in and out properly so that it helps everything flow. I could use some teaching on all that. All right. Let's see. Kane asking if I've been into coins since I was about 10. And I got introduced to coins. There was a little swap shop next to our house, which is basically like, think of a yard sale that just was open every Saturday. And this guy, he had this little outbuilding, and it was like an old school garage that he rolled open the doors, and it was full of stuff, right? It was just random old stuff like you'd see at a yard sale. And he put stuff in there every week. And I went over and I bought a little wood box full of coins, world coins. There was probably some Aussie stuff in there, I'm just saying. And really got me into coin collecting. And it got me into history also, because I think that those two things are connected. As you can tell by some of the topics that I cover, I think that collecting is fantastic because you invariably end up learning about history, even if it's accidentally, even if it's small pieces. Now, not everyone takes the time to really think about history, but it's still, I think, helpful that you just understand and have that historical context. So, all right. Guys, this has been a lot of fun. The Geek Inventory Shaken North Phoenix. I don't know what that means, Sydney. Donald, is the radio show bringing in business to your shop? I hope so. I've had a couple people that have mentioned that they heard me on the radio. So that's good. That was a part of the deal. This is going to be a 12-week thing. This was week 8. We've got 4 weeks left. I think that's how that works, basically to the end of October. Next week we'll be live. The week after that, I'm actually going to record probably on a Wednesday midday, because that Saturday I'm going to be gone. So I will keep everyone abreast of that on the community tab and let them know, because For some of you, maybe midday Wednesday is a good time, right? I mean, maybe you'll be able to stop in and watch. Maybe it's your lunch break. I know how that goes. So, stuff like that is anyway, I'll catch you then. All right. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Thanks for joining me.